Blog Talk Radio.
Shalom, friends, readers, listeners, viewers from across America and around the world. I'm your host, Dan Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv, and it's November 23rd, 2011. The Wednesday evening broadcast is the day before Thanksgiving, and we've got so much to be grateful for. I give all honor and praise to the Lord, to the Father and Son and the Holy Trinity, and thanksgiving for life and being, and for even this moment to be with you, this chance to share in the things that the Lord has blessed us with as far as discernment, and a chance to come together in gratitude and fellowship and thanksgiving for life and all things, you know, the little things, the big things, the things that we overlook, because every second of every moment is a true blessing, and it's all just a miraculous gift from our Lord. And so all glory to Him, and I hope that today finds you well and in good health and well-being and with your families in this time of festivity, whether you're in America or not, and for those of you that are outside of the country, I hope that you take every day as a moment to be grateful and to give thanks to the Lord for whatever it may be. Just, simple gratitude and humble thanksgiving for whatever it is, because everything, like I said, is a gift. And so I'm honored to be here with you, and I've got a truly, truly interesting show. It's really a continuation, even though I changed the title of the program to The Destruction of the First World Age. This is going to pick up exactly where we left off with the fifth part of the history of the Anunnaki and Nibiru, because we are to the part of the story in this particular text, this 1,000-year-old cuneiform text that was translated by Zachariah Sitchin. And I want to honor Janet Sitchin, I believe it's her uncle. Zachariah was her uncle. I want to honor her and thank her for allowing me to use some of the quotes from this particular book that I've been reading from you in my book. And the next one coming out, The Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, because it's going to help to explain all of what I'm about to go into. And this is another big secret that not many people know about. Those of you who are familiar with Doug Elwell's work, especially his latest on Planet X, the Sign of the Son of Man and the Coming Age, that book also talks about what we're going to be talking about with the destruction of the First World Age, which is also cited and immortalized in the Enuma Elish, which is an ancient Babylonian text, one of the most ancient of the creation epics that we have available. And it also is the same story that we're going to be going into. And I'm going to touch upon Scripture too, various parts to connect this, the Old Testament, the New Testament, to tie this all together for you so that you can understand what it is that I'm about to go into. Because this is some very, very ancient accounts. Most people don't know about this. This is even before even the capture of Nibiru in the solar system, before even the destruction of Rahab or Tiamat, where the asteroid belt is, and before the Earth was even transformed and placed to where it is currently, to where it could then harbor the life that we find on it today. And we're part of the blessing of that creation that the Lord allowed to unfold, to bring all this into being as we now are witness to it. But the particular passage I'm going to be speaking about is from Genesis chapter 1, verse 9, and it says this: "And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good." Genesis 1. This is also alluded to in Job chapter 26, verse 11, where it says this: "The pillars of heaven are stunned at his rebuke, and by his understanding he shatters Rahab. By his spirit the heavens were beautiful. His hands forbids the fugitive snake." Job chapter 26, verse 11. One other passage that's kind of connected to this is Romans chapter 8, verse 20. "For the creation was not willingly subjected to vanity, but through him subjecting it on hope, that also the creation will be freed from the slavery of corruption to the freedom and the glory of the children of God. For we know that all the creation groans together and travails together until now." And what I'm going to be talking about with the destruction of the First World Age is going to lead into how we ended up being in the flesh, and how it was that Adam and Eve were then created, separated, put into paradise, and once they were deceived, beguiled by the Nakash, which also, in the course of the next couple weeks, I'm going to be going into some very interesting information on the flying fiery serpents, the cockatrice, and the Nakash, because most people equate it to being a snake in the garden, but this was a particular kind of serpent being, a reptilian kind of being that was endowed with reason and could speak and did have conversation with Eve. So all these things are a little bit different if you take that into account than being just a simple snake. And so I'm going to be going into some of that and telling you some of the incredible information that I've dug up recently in studying the roots of serpent worship all across the world. And some of that information is going to be mind-blowing as well, because I'm going to tie the Nakash to the dragons, the mythical dragons, the feathered serpent, the winged serpent, Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Oannes, all these different hybrid gods, the reptilian beings, and I'm going to bring it to you in such a way that it's going to make it cohesive so that not only do you understand the strangeness of the reality that we occupy, but you'll also understand what the Word is speaking about in unfolding and unveiling all these things to you, because it is in the Word. I mean, you may deny it and you may try to hide, but truth is truth, and so once you come to understand, that is what it is. And so we're going to go into this account. Let me check the chat room first and just say hi to everybody. I appreciate everybody, Mama B and Sandy and Diana, Burning Candlestick, Yvette, the guests, Ramses. I appreciate all of you for always coming and supporting the show. And I know that, we have a lot of our friends over there. They're with John the Baptist, because he starts his show at 8 p.m., so we'll get a lot of overflow from that as well. But God bless all of you. Yes, we are family, and I appreciate each and every one of you. All right, we're going to go into this, because this is one of the most incredible things to understand about what Genesis is talking about. And once you understand what I'm talking about here, it's going to make clear to you how the first world age ended, and also how the fallen angels and their prior civilizations were judged. And for those that don't believe that this is spoken about in the Word, I want to take a real quick moment to go into two chapters. One is from Jeremiah. This is from the Old Testament. This is chapter 4, verse 23. It says this: I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heaven were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and by his fierce anger. For thus hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. And so this is the destruction of the first world age, which we're about to go into, and this has to do with the planet that is referred to as Rahab in Job, but also known as Tiamat. And that planet is the planet that used to be where the asteroid belt is now. But one final passage. This is from the New Testament, 2 Peter chapter 3. Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to us word, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that therein shall be burned up. And seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat? Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. So that is also talking about the destruction of the first world age. Now, before I get into the account from the Sumerian text, I want to also bring you an ancient account of this same event from one of the only other places that you can actually get an eyewitness account, and that's from the Colburn Bible, which is an old ancient text as well, that we've just been recently blessed to have access to. And this is from the destruction and the recreation. It's in chapter 1 of the Colburn Bible. And this is what it says. It is known, and the story comes down from ancient times, that there was not one creation but two, a creation and a recreation. It is a fact known to the wise that the earth was utterly destroyed once, and then reborn on a second wheel of creation. All the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about. I got to stop here for just a second, just to tell you something, to give you insight here. This dragon that the Lord used to bring about the destruction of Tiamat or Rahab, that's the planet Nibiru. The Lord allowed the capture of this planet to reshape this solar system so that it could, after the destruction of Rahab, Tiamat, that this planet would be in the perfect place and position to now harbor life in the multiplicity that it now holds it in. And so, it's just to tie it all together for you. Okay. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed its tail, it breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold, bright light, and beneath on the belly was a ruddy-hued glow, while behind it trailed a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick, darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shrilling trumpeting, which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed winds. Men, stricken with terror, went mad at the awful sight in the heavens. They were loosed from their senses and dashed about, crazed, not even knowing what they did. Their breath was sucked from their bodies, and they were burnt with a strange ash. Then it passed, leaving the earth enwrapped with a dark and glowing mantle, which was readily lit up inside. The bowels of the earth were torn open in great writhing upheavals, and a howling whirlwind rent the mountains apart. The wrath of the sky monster was loosened in the heavens. It lashed about in flaming fury, roaring like 1,000 thunders. It poured down fiery destruction amid a welter of thick black blood. So awesome was the fearfully aspected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. His thoughts were smothered under a cloud of forgetfulness. The earth vomited forth great gusts of foul breath from awful mouths opening up in the midst of the land. The evil breath bit at the throat before it drove men mad and killed them. Those who did not die in this manner were smothered under a cloud of red dust and ashes, or were swallowed by the yawning mouths of earth or crushed beneath crashing rocks. The first sky monster was joined by another, which swallowed the tail of the one going before, but the two could not be seen at once. This sky monster reigned and raged above earth, doing battle to possess it. But the many-bladed sword of God cut them in pieces, and their falling bodies enlarged the land and the sea. And in this manner, the first earth was destroyed by calamity descending from out of the skies. The vaults of heaven had opened to bring forth monsters more fearsome than any that ever haunted the uneasy dreams of men. Men and their dwelling places were gone. Only sky boulders and red earth remained where once there were, but amidst all the desolation, a few survived. For man is not easily destroyed. They crept out from caves and came down from the mountainsides. Their eyes were wild, and their limbs trembled, their bodies shook, and their tongues lacked control. Their faces were twisted, and their skin hung loose on their bones. They were maddened, wild beasts driven into an enclosure before flames. They knew no law, being deprived of all the wisdom they once had, and those who had guided them were also gone. The earth, the only true altar of God, had offered up a sacrifice of life and sorrow to atone for the sins of mankind. Man had not sinned indeed, but in the thing he had failed to do. Man suffers not only for what he does, but for what he fails to do. He is not chastised for making mistakes, but for failing to recognize and rectify them. Then the great canopy of dust and cloud which encompassed the earth, enshrouding it in heavy darkness, was pierced by the ruddy light, and the canopy swept down in great cloudbursts and raging storm waters. Cruel moon tears were shed for the distress of the earth and the woes of men. When the light of the sun pierced the earth's shroud, bathing the land in its revitalizing glory, the earth again knew night and day, for there were now times of light and times of darkness. The smothering canopy rolled away, and the vaults of heaven became visible to man. The foul air was purified, and new air clothed the reborn earth, shielding her from the dark, hostile void of heaven. The rainstorm ceased to beat upon the face of the land, and the waters stilled their turmoil. Earthquakes no longer tore the earth open, nor was it burned and buried by hot rocks. The land masses reestablished in stability and solidity, standing firm in the midst of the surrounding waters. The oceans fell back to their assigned places, and the land stood steady upon its foundations. The sun shone upon the land and sea, and life was renewed. Upon the face of the earth rain fell gently once more, and clouds of fleece floated across day skies. The waters were purified, the sediment sank, and life increased in abundance. Life was renewed, but it was different. Man survived, but he was not the same. The sun was not as it had been, and a moon had been taken away. Man stood in the midst of renewal and regeneration. He looked up into the heavens above in fear for the awful powers of destruction lurking there. Henceforth the placid skies would hold a terrifying secret. Man found the new earth firm and the heavens fixed. He rejoiced, but also feared, for he lived in dread that the heavens would again bring forth monsters and crash about him. When men came forth from their hiding places and refugees, the world their fathers had known was gone forever. The face of the land was changed, and earth was littered with rocks and stones which had fallen when the structure of heaven collapsed. One generation groped in the desolation and gloom, and as the thick darkness was dispelled, its children believed they were witnessing a new creation. Time passed, memory dimmed, and the record of events was no longer clear. Generation followed generation, and as the ages unfolded, new tongues and new tales replaced the old. Now, isn't that a very elaborate and beautiful account of the destruction of the First World Age? I mean, if you had to have it written down, how poetic were our ancestors in documenting the events of those days, and how accurate the depiction seems to be even for those reading it now, even for us that are privy to hear the information and to be able to take it in and just imagine that whole event and what it must have been like. Because that is the event, the destruction of Rahab, Tiamat, when this, as it says here, where the earth lost its perpetual summers, because it had perpetual summers up until that point. It was put on an ecliptic and has an tilt, an inclination that gives us the 4 seasons now. It says the sun was not as it had been, and the moon had been taken away. That one of the moons, even one of Nibiru's moons, was destroyed, because that was one of their moons that destroyed Tiamat and split her in half. And so this is the story that is being talked about in Genesis with the separation of the firmaments. And I'm going to give you a link to the Enuma Elish. I'm going to put this in the chat room. If you want to look this up, just type in ENUMA space ELISH. This is the Enuma Elish. It's a Babylonian epic tale. And it will tell you exactly what we're about to go into, but from a different perspective. And the Enuma Elish, when you read it, when you start to understand what is being talked about there, you'll understand that that the Enuma Elish is talking about the same story that I'm going to bring forward to you from this other translation. And the reason I'm going to read this other translation instead of the Enuma Elish is because the Enuma Elish is fragmented. I would be saying ... quite a bit, and I prefer to bring this story to you because it's more complete in detail, and I won't have to do the ... very much at all. And I'll stop as I go, just to take any questions, if you have any questions about what I'm about to go into. Now remember, this is the oldest creation. Even the Akkadian, even the Canaanite creation stories, they attribute all of it to the same event. That happened so long ago. And what this story is about to tell you, this is the story of how Nibiru became part of this solar system, how after it became part of this solar system, it came into conflict with Tiamat, destroyed that planet, and shifting the orbit of that particular planet and what was left over of it, the Earth was created at where we are now, at this particular orbit, and at a place in space perfect to harbor life. And so that's why the ancients celebrated this particular event. That's why it's also alluded to in Genesis. This is the whole setup for how life became possible here on this planet. And so it's important to understand this event. Now, this is the account of the earth and its gold. It is an account of the beginning and how the celestial gods created were. In the beginning, when in the above the gods in the heavens had not been called into being, and in the below key, the firm ground had not yet been named. Alone in the void there existed Apsu, the primordial begetter. Apsu is the sun. In the heights of the above, the celestial gods had not yet been created. The celestial gods are the planets that are about to come into being. In the waters of the below, the celestial gods had not yet appeared. Above and below, the gods had not yet been formed. Destinies were not yet decreed. No reed had yet been formed. No marshland had appeared. Alone did Apsu reign in the void. Then, by his winds, the primordial waters were mingled. A divine and artful spell, Apsu upon the waters cast. On the void's deep, he poured a sound sleep. Tiamat, the mother of all, as a spouse for himself he fashioned. A celestial mother, a watery beauty she was indeed. This particular planet, Tiamat, again, it was a large watery planet that came into being where the asteroid belt now is. Keeping it all into perspective for you. A celestial mother, a watery beauty she was indeed. Beside him, Apsu, little Mumu, Mumu is Mercury, then brought forth. As his messenger, he him appointed a gift for Tiamat to present. A gift resplendent to his spouse Apsu granted, a shining metal, the everlasting gold, for her alone to possess. Then it was that the two their waters mingled, divine children between them to bring forth. Male and female were the celestials created, Lamu and Lahamu. Lamu and Lahamu are Venus and Mars, just so you can understand what the Sumerians are talking about here. In the below did Apsu and Tiamat make them an abode. Before then had grown in age and in stature. In the waters of the above, Anshar and Kishar, that's Jupiter and Saturn, were formed, surpassing their brothers in size they were. As a celestial couple, the two were fashioned. A son, On, in the distant heavens was their heir. Then Antu, to be his spouse as On's equal, was brought forth. Of course, those are Neptune and Venus, the twin planets, twin watery planets. Thus were there three heavenly couples below and above, in the depths created. By names they were called the family of Apsu, with Mumu and Tiamat they formed. At that time, Nibiru had not yet been seen. The earth was not yet called into being. Mingled were the heavenly I apologize. I got kicked off, so let me just make sure that you have sound. Can somebody give me a shout out in the chat room just to make sure I have sound? I know you're 2 minutes behind me, but I'll check it. I just want to make sure that we're clear here. Yes. Okay, we're good. All right, praise God. Sorry about that. I apologize. I was booted for just a minute there. Going back into the text, we were talking about the creation of this particular solar system, how it came into being, and how Nibiru had part to play. And now we're going into the part of how Nibiru came to be part of the solar system. Remember, this is important to understand because this event is seminal in our ancient history, in the history of the solar system. This is the one cataclysmic event that set all of the other planets in their particular orbits and created the constellations, the astrological constellations, and the processional circuit that we follow, the 8,000-year procession through the zodiac. All that was set after this event. Okay. At that time, Nibiru had not yet been seen. The earth was not yet called into being. Mingled were the heavenly waters by a hammered bracelet. They were not yet separated. At that time, circuits were not yet fully fashioned. The destinies of the gods were not yet firmly decreed. The celestial kinfolk banded together. Erratic were their ways. Their ways to Apsu were verily loathsome. Tiamat, getting no rest, was aggrieved and raged. A throng to march by her side she formed. A growling, raging host against the sons of Apsu she brought forth. Withal 11 of this kind she brought forth. She made the firstborn Kingu chief among them. I want to stop here for a second. What is happening here is that Tiamat, in her large side, she sprouted 11 moons, the chief of which is called Kingu. Kingu is our moon now. It turns out to be that Kingu ends up being the moon that we have around our planet. But that Kingu, it used to be a moon of Tiamat. And so we're going to go into that here. When the celestial gods of this did hear for counsel, they rallied. Kingu she has elevated to rank as on command to him she gave. To each other they said, a tablet of destiny to his chest she has attached. His own circuit to acquire. To battle against the gods her offspring Kingu she instructed. Who shall stand up to Tiamat, the god, asked each other. None in their circuit stepped forward, none a weapon for battle would bear. At that time, in the heart of the deep, a god was engendered. Now this is the story of how Nibiru came into being, came to be part of this solar system. In a chamber of fates, a place of destinies was he born. By an artful creator was he fashioned. The son of his own son he was. From the deep where he was engendered, the God from his family in a rushing departed. A gift of his creator, the seed of life within him, away he carried. To the void he set his course. A new destiny he was seeking. The verse to glimpse the wandering celestial was the ever watchful Antu. Remember, Antu is Uranus, and An is Neptune. Alluring was his figure, a radiance he was beaming. Lordly was his gait, exceedingly great was his course. Of all the gods he was the loftiest, surpassing theirs his circuit was. The first to glimpse him was Antu, her breast by child never sucked. Come, be my son, she called to him. Let me your mother become. She cast her net and made him welcome, made his course for the purpose suited. Now, when it's talking about she cast her net, it's talking about her gravitational field, that it was her gravitational attraction that allured him into this solar system and set him on an orbit. Nibiru, of course, is who we're talking about, but set Nibiru on a course to where he became a permanent member of the solar system. Also, it's important for you to understand that Nibiru spins in a clockwise fashion, whereas the other planets all spin in a counterclockwise fashion. And that Nibiru cuts across the heavens, separating the firmaments into an as above and so below, right where the asteroid belt is. All right. She cast her net and made him welcome, made his course for the purpose suited. Her words filled the newcomer's heart with pride. The one who would nurse him made him haughty. His head to double size grew larger. 4 members at his sides he sprouted. These are moons that Nibiru just sprouted. He moved his lips in acceptance. A godly fire from them blazed forth. Toward onto his course he turned, his face to on soon to show, which meaning he's now moving on towards not Uranus but now Neptune. So he's moving closer and closer towards Tiamat. When On saw him, my son, with exaltation he shouted, to leadership you shall be consigned, a host by your side will be your servants. Let Nibiru by your name as crossing forever known. He bowed to Nibiru, turning his face at Nibiru's passage. He spread his net, for Nibiru 4 servants he brought forth. He spread his net, his host by his side to be the south wind, the north wind, the fast wind, the west wind. With joyful heart on to Anshar, his forebear, the arrival of Nibiru he announced. Anshar, upon his hearing Gaga, who was by his side as an emissary, sent forth words of wisdom to On, deliver a path. Hold on just a second, people. Excuse me. Give me just 1 minute. I apologize. Thank you. I have to pick up the cat. It was a cat malfunction. I apologize, everybody. Which there's a whole other interesting story I'll bring to light at some point about how this paralyzed cat just came into my life. It's a crazy story, but we are now fostering a paralyzed kitty. It's an interesting situation. But I have uploaded video for those that are interested under Endeavor Freedom. The cat's name is Chase, and he got wrapped up in my wires, and so he pulled down my mic. But anyways, let's continue on. All right. Let Nibiru be your name as crossing forever known. He spread his net for Nibiru, 4 servants he brought forth. His host by his side to be the south wind, the north wind, the fast wind, the west wind. With joyful heart on to Anshar, his forebear, the arrival of Nibiru announced. Words of wisdom to On, deliverer, a task to Nibiru to assign. He charged Gaga is Pluto, to give voice to what was in his heart, to On thus say, Tiamat, she who bore us now detests us, She has set us up a warring host. She is furious with rage. I'm going to skip just a little bit and go ahead and get into the celestial battle, the war between Tiamat and Nibiru that led to the creation of this particular planet. All right. Toward the raging Tiamat he set his face. A spell with his lips he uttered. As a cloak for protection, he the pulsar and the emitter put on. With a fearsome radiance his head was crowned. On his right he posted the smiter. On his left the repeller he placed. The seven winds, his host of helpers, like a storm he sent forth. Toward the raging Tiamat he was rushing, clamoring for battle. The gods thronged about him, and then from his path they departed. To scan Tiamat and her helpers alone he was advancing, the scheme of Kingu, her host's commander, to conceive. When he saw valiant Kingu, blurred became his vision. His course became upset. His doings were confused. Tiamat's band tightly her encircled. With terror they trembled. Tiamat to her roots gave a shudder. A mighty roar she emitted. On Nibiru she cast a spell, and then engulfed him with her charms. The issue between them was joined. The battle was unavoidable. Face to face they came, Tiamat and Nibiru. Against each other they were advancing. They for battle approached. They pressed on for single combat. The Lord spread his net to encompass her. He cast it. With fury Tiamat cried out. Like one possessed she lost her senses. The evil wind which had been behind him, Nibiru drove forward in her face. He let it loose. She opened her mouth, the evil wind to swallow, but could not close her lips. The evil wind charged her belly. Into her innards it made its way. Her innards were howling. Her body was distended. Her mouth was open wide. Through the opening Nibiru shot a brilliant arrow, a lightning most divine. It pierced her innards, her belly it tore apart. It tore into her womb, it split apart her heart. Having thus subdued her, her life breath he extinguished. The lifeless body Nibiru surveyed. Like a slaughtered carcass, Tiamat now was. Beside their lifeless mistress, her 11 helpers trembled with terror. In Nibiru's net they were captured, unable they were to flee. This is the moons that got caught in the gravitational net of the planet, and Nibiru destroyed the moons. Kingu, who by Tiamat was made the host chief, was among them. The Lord put him in fetters to his lifeless mistress. He bound him. It's talking about how Kingu was then bound to the carcass of Tiamat that later coalesced into what became the earth. He wrested from Kingu the tablets of destinies unrightly to him given, stamped it with his own seal, fastened the destinies to his own chest. The others of Tiamat's band as captives he bound. In his circuit he then them ensnared. He trampled them underfoot, cut them up to pieces. He bound them all to his circuit. To turn around he made them backward to course. And this is proven in some of the planets in our solar system, like Venus. It spins backwards, opposite of what all the other planets spin. And the only way that could ever happen is if a large planetary-sized object, larger than Venus and the Earth, came in to disrupt the proper rotation of Venus to such a degree that it spins backwards. That's the only thing that could, so that's one of the things that verifies the story. As it says right here in this particular sentence, it says, he bent them all to a circuit to turn around. He made them backward to course. Even some of the planets, the outer planets, like spin on their side, or spin sideways, or even Pluto's got a weird orbit. But anyways, continuing on because we're going to run out of time. The others of Tiamat's band as captives he bound in a serpent, them ensnared. From the place of battle, Nibiru then departed to the gods who had him appointed the victory to announce. He made a circuit about Apsu to Kishar and Anshar light journeyed. Gaga came out to greet him as a herald to the others. He then journeyed beyond and onto Nibiru to the abode in the deep proceeded. The fate of lifeless Tiamat and Kingu he then considered. This is the second orbit of Nibiru as part of the solar system. To Tiamat, whom he had subdued, the Lord Nibiru then returned. He made his way to her, paused to view her lifeless body, to artfully divide the monster in his heart lie was planning. Then as a muscle into two parts he split her. Her chest from her lower parts he separated. Her inner channels he cut apart. Her golden veins he beheld with wonder. Trotting upon her hinder part, the Lord her upper part completely severed. The north wind, his helper from his side, he summoned. To thrust away the severed head, the north wind he commanded. In the void to place it, Nibiru, wind upon Tiamat, then hovered, sweeping upon her gushing waters. Nibiru shot a lightning, to north wind he gave a signal, and in a brilliance was Tiamat's upper part to a region unknown carried. With her the bound Kingu was also exiled. Of the severed part a companion to be, the hinder part's fate Nibiru then considered. As an everlasting trophy of the battle he wished it to be. A constant reminder in the heavens the place of the battle to enshrine. With his mace the hinder part he smashed to bits and pieces, then strung them together as a band to form a hammered bracelet. Locking them together as a watchman, he stationed them, a firmament to divide the waters from the waters. The upper waters above the firmament from the waters below it, he separated. Now, does that not remind you of the passage that we were just reading? Genesis chapter 1. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together the waters called the sea. And God saw that it was good. This is the event. This is the event that is being talked about in Genesis chapter 1. That was the destruction of the first world age. And this is the event that made life on this planet then possible. I'm going to read just a few more sentences, then we'll finish up. Artful works Nibiru thus fashioned. The Lord then crossed the heaven to survey the regions. From Apsu's quarter to the abode of Gaga, he measured the dimensions. The edge of the deep Nibiru then examined. Towards his birthplace he cast his gaze. He paused and hesitated, then to the firmament, the place of the battle. Slowly he returned. Passing again in Apsu's region of the sun's missing spouse, he thought with remorse. He gazed upon Tiamat's wounded half. To her upper part he gave attention. The waters of life, her bounty, from the wounds were still pouring. Her golden veins, Apsu's rays were reflecting. The seed of life, his creator's legacy, Nibiru then remembered. When he trod on Tiamat, when he split her asunder, to her the seed he surely imparted. He addressed words to Apsu, to him thus saying, with your warming rays to the wounds give healing. Let the broken part new life be given.
In your family is a daughter to be. Let the waters to one place be gathered. Let firm land appear. By firm land let her be called Ki, henceforth her name to be. Apsu to the words of Nibiru gave heed. Let the earth join my family. Ki, firm land of the below, let earth her name henceforth be. By her turning let there day and night be. In the days my healing rays to her I shall provide. Let Kingu be a creature of the night, to shine at night I shall appoint him. Earth's companion the moon forever to be. Nibiru the words of Apsu with satisfaction heard. He crossed the heavens and surveyed the region. To the gods who had him elevated he granted permanent stations. Their circuits he destined that none shall transgress nor fall short of each other. He strengthened the heavenly locks, gates on both sides he established. An outermost abode he chose for himself. Beyond Gaga, Pluto, were its dimensions. The great circuit to be his destiny he beseeched Apsu for him to decree. All the gods spoke up from their station. Let Nibiru's sovereignty be surpassing. Most radiant of the gods he is. Let him truly the son of the sun be. From his quarter Apsu gave his blessing. Nibiru shall hold the crossing heaven and earth. Crossing shall be his name. The gods shall cross over neither above nor below, but he shall hold the central position. The shepherd of the gods he shall be. Ashar be his circuit, that his destiny will forever be. And that is where we're going to stop. In the next part, next week on Wednesday, I'm going to go into the account of the olden times. And this will tell you how, well, I'm going to read the first few sentences. Now this is the account of how the olden times began, and of the era that in the annals of the golden era by name was known, and how from Nibiru to earth the missions went the gold to obtain. The escape of Alalu from Nibiru was its beginning. With great understanding was Alalu endowed. Much knowledge he by learning acquired. That's the exiled. So, anyways, we'll pick it up there next week. I appreciate everybody. We've got just a few minutes here, so let me end with this.
The Wednesday evening broadcast is the day before Thanksgiving, and we've got so much to be grateful for. I give all honor and praise to the Lord, to the Father and Son and the Holy Trinity, and thanksgiving for life and being, and for even this moment to be with you, this chance to share in the things that the Lord has blessed us with as far as discernment, and a chance to come together in gratitude and fellowship and thanksgiving for life and all things, the little things, the big things, the things that we overlook, because every second of every moment is a true blessing, and it's all just a miraculous gift from our Lord. And so all glory to Him, and I hope that today finds you well and in good health and well-being and with your families in this time of festivity, whether you're in America or not. And for those of you that are outside of the country, I hope that you take every day as a moment to be grateful and to give thanks to the Lord for whatever it may be, just, simple gratitude and humble thanksgiving for whatever it is, because everything, like I said, is a gift. And so I'm honored to be here with you, and shalom, friends, readers, listeners, viewers from across America and around the world. I'm your host, Zach Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv, and it's November 23rd, 2000.
Blog Talk Radio.
I've got a truly, truly interesting show. It's really a continuation, even though I changed the title of the program to The Destruction of the First World Age. This is going to pick up exactly where we left off with the fifth part of the history of the Anunnaki and Nibiru, because we are to the part of the story in this particular text, this 1,000-year-old cuneiform text that was translated by Zachariah Sitchin. And I want to honor Janet Sitchin, I believe it's her uncle. Zachariah was her uncle. I want to honor her and thank her for allowing me to use some of the quotes from this particular book that I've been reading from you in my book. And the next one coming out, The Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, because it's going to help to explain all of what I'm about to go into. And this is another big secret that not many people know about. Those of you who are familiar with Doug Elwell's work, especially his latest on Planet X, the sign of the Son of Man, and the coming age,